In this video, we're going to try to understand why some people who follow the Jewish religion don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. We'll look at how people lived, what they believed, and how it influenced their decisions. I'll tell you about ancient stories and explain how they relate to what people think nowadays. This video will help you understand better this issue that often seems complicated. You'll learn new things and might even change your perspective on religion. If you're curious to know more about this topic that generates so much debate, you can't miss it. Let's discover together the truth behind this story. Imagine you promised to give a certain amount of money to help the church or something religious, right? You made a deal with yourself to give some money. But then your parents really need financial help and you say you can't give it because you already promised that money to the church. That seems kind of strange, doesn't it? Well, here comes Jesus, the guy who taught a lot of cool stuff. It's not just about following rules, it's about understanding what's right. He's saying that some traditions and practices are kind of wrong, you know? For example, Jesus says it's important to help and honor our parents even if it means breaking a promise we made to the church. Moreover, Jesus is also talking about things like working on Saturdays, which was super strict back then. He's sort of saying that it's not just about following rules, but understanding the purpose behind them. He even talks about loving our enemies and praying for them. So, even if someone isn't nice to us, the idea is to treat that person with love and respect. It's like a different way of seeing things, but Jesus was always like that, wanting us to think more about what really matters. So, imagine that back then, many people thought that to deal with evil, it was necessary to act forcefully, like sending away or even hurting bad people. It was like a rule, kind of an old law that said so. But then comes Jesus, and all this idea of getting rid of evil all at once seems kind of outdated to him. He wants us to look at things differently. You know, they were going through a tough time with the Roman oppression and wanted to get rid of it once and for all, but Jesus had other ideas. He starts teaching things that were very different from what people were used to hearing. Like, he talked about forgiving others, loving even those who weren't nice to us. That left many people confused and even upset. Like, they thought, this guy can't be the Messiah. He's doing everything opposite of what we expected. But then, something really cool happens. Jesus heals a paralyzed man. And not only that, he says something that leaves everyone amazed. He tells the man that his sins are forgiven. This leaves the religious leaders kind of shocked because it's something they didn't expect to hear. It's like Jesus is showing that forgiveness and love are more important than just punishing people. And that's what makes everyone wonder, like, wow, who is this guy? It's really exciting to see how Jesus brought a new way of thinking to the people of that time. Imagine this scene. This guy shows up and says something that leaves everyone speechless. He says you can be forgiven for your mistakes just because he said so. And then, everyone is like, what? Who does he think he is? So, this leaves everyone kind of confused and even irritated. People are like, who does he think he is to say that? And that's why, according to what Paul says, Jesus becomes like a thorn in the Jews' side. They simply can't understand what he's saying, and that ends up being a problem for them. You know, it's like that story that says the builders rejected a stone that, in the end, turned out to be the most important. That rejected stone is Jesus. The builders were the Jewish people and they kind of ignored Jesus. But look, that rejected stone ended up becoming the main cornerstone of the Christian faith. So, Paul is saying that Jesus was rejected by the Jews but ended up becoming something essential for the Christians. It's like one of those plot twists we see in movies where what seems to be a problem at the beginning turns out to be the solution in the end. It's kind of complicated, but it's an important part of Jesus' story and the Christian faith. You know, in chapters 9 to 11, something very interesting happens. It's like a moment when we realize that, because of the Jewish people's decision, now we, people like you, me, and many others, the Gentiles, are getting a chance. It's like a door opening for us. Before, only the Jewish people were considered part of God's family, but now, with them rejecting Jesus as the Messiah, we, the Gentiles, are also being invited into this family. It's like a super special invitation, you know? So, God is like, okay, since the Jews didn't want it, now it's the Gentiles' turn. It's like a new generation and we're receiving the torch to continue the divine plan of being a light to the world. It's quite a responsibility. So, you might be thinking, what now? What do we do with this? Well, one thing we can do is pray for our Jewish friends. Like, send positive vibes wishing that they also understand this special invitation from God. It's like a new phase of history and we're part of it. It's pretty exciting to think about, right? And that's what the book of Romans is teaching us. It's like an invitation to a great adventure, and we're the chosen ones to participate. Imagine Paul talking to the brothers and sisters as if it were a very direct conversation. He starts by saying that what he most desires and fervently prays for is the salvation of the people of Israel. It's like a heartfelt request, you know? He realizes that those guys there have a huge enthusiasm for God, but it's like that enthusiasm is kind of on the wrong track. Like, they're trying hard, but they're not understanding how God really wants things to work. They're kind of trying to do everything on their own, following their own rules. But Jesus has already done everything that needed to be done. He has already taken care of it. It's like the law, all those rules has been fulfilled by Jesus. And then, whoever believes in him is good with God, like, everything's okay between them. So, it's kind of like Paul saying, guys, chill out. Jesus already did the heavy lifting, now it's just believing in him and everything's okay with God. It's like a very direct message, you know? Like, he wants everyone to understand that there's no need to kill themselves following rules, just trust in what Jesus did, and that's it, everything's okay. So, what about our Jewish friends, right? Like, what should we feel and do for them? Well, you know, we can take an example from Paul, who has this huge desire in his heart, you know what it is? He really wants all the people of Israel to be saved, like, everyone. Remember when I talked about the 2 times Jesus came? So, many of the things that were in the ancient predictions about the Messiah happened the first time Jesus came here on earth, like a bunch of checkboxes that were marked, done. But look, there are still some checkboxes there, waiting to be marked the second time Jesus comes back, like, he's going to come back again. And it's in the second coming that some other things from the ancient prophecies are going to happen, like, a lot of cool stuff. It's going to be like a 1,000-year reign of Jesus, where he's going to put into practice all these things that are there in the predictions. So, what we can do for our Jewish friends is kind of really hope that they understand all this too, you know. It's like, we can be in that positive cheer, really wishing that they see and understand this incredible plan that's tucked away in the predictions. After all, we want everyone to be part of this party that Jesus' second coming is going to be, right? Just imagine, it's in the predictions that Jesus is going to come back, and then there's going to be a real spectacle. He's going to establish a kingdom here on earth, bringing together all the Jews, and it's going to be a big celebration. He's going to touch their hearts, making everyone worship and follow him with open hearts. But, you know, all this hasn't happened yet in the first time Jesus came. This thing is going to happen only in his second coming, which is still to happen. It's like a highly anticipated event, you know? So, like, what do you think happened? Why do you think the Jews didn't accept Jesus as the Messiah the first time he came? It's a very interesting question, right? Like, we can think of several things that might have influenced their decision. Maybe they were expecting a different kind of Messiah, you know? Like, with a more heroic movie style or something. Or maybe they found it hard to accept Jesus because he was different from what they were expecting. It's one of those questions that we can keep thinking and discussing, you know? It's like we're trying to understand a super complicated puzzle. But it's really cool because we are learning about an important part of Jesus and the Jews' history. And you know what's even cooler? These stories we're talking about invite us to think, learn, and even appreciate what's written in the scriptures. It's like each story is full of secrets that we need to uncover. So stay tuned because we'll explore more of these biblical stories on our channel. Don't forget to like and share what you think in the comments. When Jesus appeared, he gave a bunch of proofs that he was the Messiah, like the long-awaited guy. And then he starts saying some super important things. He says like this, guys, listen up, it's time to change your life. Repent of your sins and turn back to God because the kingdom of heaven is near. So, the people back then were kind of expecting the Messiah to bring a bunch of good things here on earth, like wealth and health. Jesus comes with a different message. He says like, hold on, folks. What I'm bringing is much more than that. It's a kingdom that brings spiritual blessings, which is like wealth for our hearts. So, he spends a while teaching about these things, you know? Like, they had learned that God was unique, that there was no one like him, you know? And then, when Jesus comes talking about how we should honor and love only God, they're like, no, that's not right. That goes against everything I learned since childhood. So, imagine the confusion that caused. It was one of those situations where people were torn between what they believed and what Jesus was teaching. It's like their world turned upside down. Imagine Jesus was there, talking to the people, and he drops a bomb like that out of nowhere. He says something like, before Abraham was born, I am. So, the people were like, what does he mean by that? They understood the message exactly. He was kind of saying that he existed even before Abraham's time, like, since forever. And that left everyone stunned because, wait, how can someone be born before someone else, right? It implied that he existed before everything. But he doesn't stop there. He drops another bomb, I am. And that made people even more surprised because these two words, I am, are like a God thing. It's like he was declaring himself as part of something much bigger, like something divine. So, imagine the confusion that caused. They were there, facing someone who claimed to be part of something eternal, something divine. It was a very impactful moment and got everyone thinking about who this Jesus really was. A story full of mystery and surprises. In the Jewish faith, the name of God is Yahweh. It's like the supreme name, you know? And back in ancient times when God spoke to Moses, he said something very interesting. Moses asked, "When I tell them who you are, what do I say?" And God's response was surprising. He said something like, "Look, Moses, don't worry about it. Tell them that I am who I am sent you." So, imagine, when Jesus started using this name of God to refer to himself, people were shocked. They saw it as total disrespect, like blasphemy, you know? So much so that the next moment, they were already grabbing stones to throw at him. It was a big mess. And look, blasphemy back then was a serious thing. It could even lead to death by stoning. But Jesus found a way to get out of that situation unscathed and left the temple. It was one of those tension-filled stories where people are like, what's going to happen now? But the important thing is that, even with all that, Jesus continued strong, teaching his lessons and doing his part. A story full of challenges and surprises. Look at this part of the story I'm going to tell you. Jesus said something that left everyone speechless. He said, "I and the Father are one." It was like a bomb. They understood exactly what he meant because they remembered a very important prayer, the Shema, which says that the Lord our God is one. So, imagine Jesus comes and says that he and the Father are one. It shocked a lot of people because they saw it as a total lack of respect. So much so that, the next minute, people were already grabbing stones to throw at him. It was a big mess. And do you know why this happened? Because for many, the story of Jesus putting himself on the same level as God was blasphemy, a serious dishonor. And that was one of the reasons they rejected him as the Messiah, you know? For them, he was crossing boundaries, stepping where he shouldn't. So, you can see that things weren't easy for Jesus, right? He faced many challenges and resistance along the way, but he remained firm in what he believed. A story full of emotion and twists. Imagine that Jesus came and stirred up the religious traditions of the people of that time, right? They were used to a bunch of rules that were passed down from generation to generation, like things they considered super sacred. So, when Jesus appeared and started questioning these laws and traditions, it was total confusion. Like, people got defensive, feeling challenged. It was as if Jesus arrived and said, "Hold on, are all these rules really right?" And look, there's one more thing. Many of Jesus' teachings seemed to go against what was written in the Old Testament, which made everyone even more confused. So, just imagine this scene. Jesus arriving and questioning all these traditions, making everyone rethink what they believed. It was a time of much discussion and reflection where people had to reconsider their beliefs. A story full of twists and challenges. Imagine that some guys, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, came from Jerusalem to talk to Jesus. They were kind of upset because they saw Jesus' disciples sort of ignoring an ancient tradition of theirs, you know? It was that thing about washing hands before eating, something they had been doing for a long time. So, Jesus, always with all that wisdom, responded by saying that it's not just a matter of keeping the hands clean on the outside, but what really matters is having a clean heart on the inside. Like, of course, it's important to wash hands, but what's more important is taking care of the heart, got it? He was teaching that outward cleanliness doesn't matter much if inside we're full of bad thoughts. So, it's as if he was saying that we need to worry more about what's inside us than what's outside. It was one of those very important lessons that Jesus gave, showing that what really counts is what's in our hearts. A story full of valuable teachings. When Jesus appeared and started fulfilling some of these prophecies, people got kind of lost. Like, there was a prophecy in Isaiah that talked about how the Messiah would be, but people didn't quite understand that this was for Jesus' first coming. So, the first reason why many rejected Jesus as the Messiah was this confusion with the prophecies. It was like a misunderstanding that left everyone kind of lost. But wait, there's still more to explore in the story. Just keep following along with us. I'll keep telling you some things, another little piece of this Bible story together. So, imagine that there are a ton of prophecies in the Old Testament about how the Messiah would be, right? Like, in one place it said he would be born in a city called Bethlehem, but in another it said he would suffer and die. So, the problem was that many Jewish leaders were focused only on these prophecies that Jesus hadn't fulfilled yet. Like, they were expecting the Messiah to do a bunch of specific things, and when they saw that Jesus wasn't exactly doing these things, they were kind of disappointed. But look, it's important to remember that there were people who understood that these prophecies would be fulfilled in a different way, you know? And that the Messiah would do this in his second coming, not the first. But not everyone was aware of this, so they ended up rejecting Jesus. So, this was another reason why many people didn't accept Jesus as the Messiah. Wow, how much mystery in this story, right? But wait, there's still more to discover. Just imagine that the ancient prophets, those guys who wrote about the Messiah way back, didn't quite understand that there would be some time between his first and second coming. It was like a secret kept under lock and key. So, when Jesus came and didn't fulfill all the prophecies about the Messiah right away, many people were kind of confused. They expected him to solve all the problems at once. But the truth is there was a little break between his two comings, and that wasn't very clear to everyone. And look how interesting, the Apostle Paul even talked about this, calling it a hidden mystery. In other words, it was something that nobody had really figured out until then. So, there's another reason why many people didn't accept Jesus as the Messiah right away. Wow, how many hidden secrets in this story, right? But we're here to unravel all of this together. Let's keep exploring. There's a revelation that was only revealed to the Apostle Paul, did you know that? He talked about a super important mystery that even the guys from past generations hadn't understood yet. What could this mystery be, huh? Well, Paul explained that it's about the Gentiles, yes, people from other nationalities. He said that now, through the Holy Spirit, the Gentiles can also be part of Jesus' followers. So just imagine the surprise of the people at the time. They weren't used to this idea that everyone could follow Jesus, not just the Jews. It was a revolution in people's mindset. And look how cool, now we, all of us, can be part of this family too, following Jesus' teachings. It's like everyone is important and has a special place in this story. Nice, isn't it? So, there's another amazing discovery from the Bible. Let's keep exploring together. Many people thought that when the Messiah came, he would solve all the problems at once, you know? Like, they would end the bad things and bring a bunch of good things. But look, at the time when Jesus was born and began his mission here on earth, people were going through a very difficult time. They were under the rule of the Roman Empire, unable to do much as they wanted. So, people hoped that the Messiah would come and fix this whole situation. The thing is, Jesus didn't do all of that right away. He didn't come in and fix everything at once. And that's where a lot of people got a bit confused because they were expecting a superhero who would solve everything in one go. But you know what? It's important to understand that things aren't always that simple. Jesus' mission was deeper than just solving a country's problems. He came to bring a message of love and hope to everyone, without distinction. So, here's something to think about. Sometimes things don't happen the way we expect them to, but there's always a bigger reason behind it all. Shall we keep discovering more about this story together? Just keep following along with us. Many people expected that when the Messiah came, he would fix everything that was wrong. They wanted him to solve the problems and establish a really cool kingdom here on earth where the Jewish people would be the main ones, ruling and governing alongside the Messiah. But, you know, Jesus didn't do that right away. The first time he came, it wasn't like that. But hey, don't worry because when he comes again, it'll be different. So, here are some things they expected Jesus to do. First, they wanted him to restore the kingdom of Israel. There are even passages in the Bible, like in Joel, that talk about how the Messiah would come and rid the world of all evil, making everything peaceful. But you see, it's important to understand that Jesus came with a different mission. He didn't just come to solve the problems of a small place. He came to bring a message of love and peace to the whole world, to everyone, everywhere. So, here's the idea. Even if things don't happen the way we expect, there's still a lot of love and hope to spread around. There are plenty of passages that talk about what the Messiah would do when he arrived here on earth. In Psalm 2 verse 6, it says that the Messiah will reign and rule with a rod of iron. It's like an image of power and authority, you know? And hey, there's another really cool prophecy in Isaiah 2 verse 4 which talks about how the Messiah will bring peace to the whole world. It's like there won't be any more war, just peace and tranquility. But you know what? Even Jesus' closest friends were a bit confused by these prophecies. They even asked if Jesus would fulfill all these things before going back to heaven. Yeah, folks, even they had their doubts. But you know what? The most important thing is to believe that Jesus came to bring love and peace to the world and that he will come back one day to make everything even better. So, just trust and wait with faith. Shall we keep discovering more of these prophecies together? Just keep following along with us.